Joining me now is Richard Wellings from the Institute of Economic Affairs. We're also joined tonight by Paul Sellers from the TUC. Gentlemen, it's good to have you on the programme tonight. Paul, let's start with you. So 15 years on, even the architect of this policy says it's not working anymore. Do you agree with him?
Well, I don't think it's a disaster. The minimum wage is still helpful. It raises the pay of about 1 million people each year. But it's not enough in itself. And of course, we need to do more for low-paid workers. Our slogan now is Britain needs a pay rise. So we need to spread it out. The minimum wage needs to be higher, but we need other measures as well in order to bring pay up.
Richard, what do you think?
Well, I think the minimum wage has been positively harmful. We have massive youth unemployment, around 1 million young people out of work. Also, I mean, I think it's just plain
wrong.
What
evidence is there that links the minimum wage to youth unemployment in this
country? I mean, there's a huge amount of economic evidence. I mean, we can argue about how much unemployment it causes, and that's partly affected by welfare benefits, but it's widely accepted among economists that it does cause unemployment, and I think even the Labour Party now accept that. But the other issue is freedom of choice. I mean, if someone wants to work for £6 an hour, then I say, let them do so. It's often a first step on a career ladder. So,
I mean, I suppose, Paul, it looks very ineffective, doesn't it? Fair enough, it's stopping people being exploited, which is a great thing in the workplace, but it's well below a living wage, isn't it? Which is, I think, £7.45 an hour. So it's a bit pointless, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it's pointless, but I think you're right to say that people need more than that to live on.
And realistically, is that going to happen? Are we going to get a hike in the minimum wage?
I think minimum wage it's been difficult in recent years, but as the economy picks up, I think we'll see that pick up. You also see government promoting a living wage to some extent. Boris Johnson certainly, and even David Cameron says a living wage is an idea whose time has come. So,
isn't there a case for that, don't you think, Richard?
No, I mean, I'd much rather see people earning, say, £200, £250 a week than £71 a week on job seekers allowance. I think that's the important thing. So we don't want to increase unemployment any more than it is already. If you include incapacity benefit, we've probably got 6 or 7 million people out of work in this country, which is an absolute scandal.
Paul?
Well, let's be clear on this. There's no link between the minimum wage and unemployment.
Well, this gentleman says there is.
And
he's an economist.
Well, so am I, but the Low Pay Commission spends all its time studying the labour market around us, as do loads of economists. None of them can find that the minimum wages cost a single job. And the reason is that labour markets don't behave quite like some economists think. Employers don't always pay as much as they can afford. They prefer to keep some of it in their pocket. Now,
and that's fair enough, isn't it? Because business is there to make money. You can't argue with that, can you?
Well, I mean, the other argument, of course, is investments. If business costs are artificially pushed up, then investment goes down, which is bad for pay in the long term.
But
so
do you really
it's
want
more
to see people
complicated than that.
working below the minimum wage in this country? Do you think that's fair?
Well, I think it is fair for certain people in certain
right?
circumstances, because, say, a young person with no experience and few skills, they want that first foot in the door. Maybe they're willing to get a low wage for a few months, then build up experience, get some training. Then later on in a few years' time, they'll get paid a lot more. So the problem is, at the moment, this is a massive barrier to young people getting jobs, and it's absolutely appalling if it does that to the economy. These people are just left on the shelf and don't get a first opportunity. It's awful.
What's your answer to that?
Well, that's an assertion, but there actually is no evidence that the minimum wage has caused any loss of youth employment. Actually, having a sustainable recovery and a vibrant economy depends on pay rising as well. Otherwise, business doesn't have any customers.
But do you understand how some businesses can't afford to pay it? Particularly, it was introduced, wasn't it, boom times in this country. Those years are long gone, aren't they?
The minimum wage itself is quite modest at the moment. That's why we can't find any job that's been lost through that. And actually, we've got a record number of businesses at the time. Of course, any pay rise has to be sustainable. We know that as well as everyone else here.
Rich, I know that one of your answers is to try and tackle the cost of living, but that's going to be impossible. That's going to be even more impossible than getting wages to rise in this country.
I don't think so. I mean,
how would you do that then?
When we think about things like housing, that's the main problem.
OK, how are you going to stop
energy.
the housing market growing in London?
Well, the most important thing is to liberalise the planning system and also deregulate building regulations, so low-cost housing can be built very cheaply. The supply increases and prices. Well, I mean, it can happen relatively quickly. It could be done in the medium term, 2 or 3 years. There could be a massive wave of new housing to get rents down, and that would make a massive difference.
The oil price, how would you get that down?
Well, that's another issue. I mean, obviously the green policies don't help that are pushing up energy prices for everyone.
OK, could you live on £13,000 a year?
No, I couldn't. I challenge anyone watching this to do that. It's a very, very modest wage, and it needs to be more.
And what do you think, Richard? Could you live on £13,000 a year?
Yes, I mean, I have done in the past when I've worked part-time.
How would you do it now? Could you afford that
Well, I
now?
wouldn't want to do, but I think it is possible, and particularly if for young people who perhaps still living at home, then the minimum wage still offers quite a reasonable disposable income. And obviously, it depends on the individual circumstances.
Okay.
Bad news for mum and dad, I think.
We finally thought they got rid of you, but oh no. Richard Wellings and Paul Seller, thank you very much for joining us tonight.